Hello and welcome back. My name is Lexi Jong, and here I like to talk about luxury makeup. Today we are going to be going over my thoughts on the Chanel holiday collection. Now I already have a video up with lots of swatches and unboxing and all of that. Those were first impressions, but I have been playing more with this collection, so I have full extended thoughts on these items, and let's go ahead and get started. Let's start off by going over the items that I picked up. We'll look at some swatches, and then I also have several different eye swatches to show you of the eyeshadows, so slightly different applications so you can see how you can get kind of a light wash of color versus a built-up shade, because this formula is pretty different. It's a really special formula. And then I also have a couple looks to show you as well. Each of the eyeshadow compacts, these are Ombre Premiere shadows, which they do have different finishes in that line. These ones in particular are the Longwear Powder eyeshadow. The ones that came out last year with the holiday collection were like a cream to powder formula, so they are not the same. And if you'd like to see a comparison of the gold shade from last year's holiday collection, I have that in the original video, so I will leave that down below in the description box and linked here. Each of these shadows are made in Italy, and they have an approximate shelf life of 18 months, and they are 2 grams. They come with a foam tip applicator, and the foam tip applicator is great if you are looking for more pigmented, saturated color on your lids. So we're going to go ahead and do some finger swatches, and these finger swatches will show you what the color looks like if you have a more saturated application. This other one here is 926 or Blanc. These are the first two here. So you can see that Orientique is going to be a kind of like a burnished gold. There's a little bit of an orangey gold tint to it, so it's a warm gold, and I'd say it's about medium in tone. Or Blanc, when you have it next to Orientique, it really looks like much more of a champagne shade, but when I put it on my lids, let's see here, you can tell it's definitely much more of a light gold. So putting it next to Orientique, you see more of the champagne shade, but when it is by itself, it looks more like a soft pale gold. This is 927 Quiver Rose. And 928 Queer Brun. Now, out of these shadows, you can see that these top 3, Orientique, Or Blanc, and Quiver Rose, these are all going to be a little bit more shimmery. All 4 of these actually have shimmer in them, but Queer Brun, just because it's like a stronger satin formula, so there's a sheen to it, but no real glitter particles. So this one is a little bit different. It's also a lot deeper than any of these others. These 3 all have shimmer particles in them. So there's very fine micro glitter that you can see. It kind of glistens. It's more so present in Or Blanc and Quiver Rose. Orientique is kind of like a cross between these. So you've got some of the sparkle, but you also have a very strong satin finish underneath it. So it's not quite as sparkly as Or Blanc and Quiver Rose. Next up, we have Les Chaînes de Chanel. This is the illuminating blush powder that came out. And this, I almost didn't get it at first, but I'm very glad I did. So this is the blush. And you can see that it is similar in tone to Quiver Rose eyeshadow, but there are differences. I'm going to re-swatch Quiver Rose right here next to it so you can see them side by side. Let's put Quiver Rose right here. You can see that it's going to be slightly more coppery. You can also see that Quiver Rose has more shimmer to it than Les Chaînes de Chanel. Les Chaînes de Chanel, I mean, it's an illuminating blush. It's not matte, but it's more matte than the eyeshadow is. It doesn't have that sparkle. And you can see that the warmth is a little bit different between the 2 of them. So the eyeshadow is just a little bit warmer, and the blush is a little bit rosier. I also picked up the 4 lipsticks in the holiday collection, and I love these click top lipsticks. So they did this with last year's holiday collection as well. These are the Rouge Allure, and all 4 of these have a little sparkle. So you just click this, pull it up, and you can see you've got the gold trimmed edging on this case, which differentiates it from the regular line. And this is number 107 or beige. And you can see here that you've got little gold flecks in there. I'm gonna swatch the lipsticks on my hand. So here is or beige. You can see the little gold flecks in there. This is 117 or Cuivre. So there's one swatch of it. There we go. And you can see that it's really more of a bright rose shade. When it says or Cuivre, which I thought meant copper gold, I might be wrong on that, but I expected it to be a little bit more coppery, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that it's really a bit more of a mid-tone rose, and I absolutely love that shade. Next up, we have 127, and this is Rouge d'Or. So here's that. This is gorgeous, true red. There is a blue base, and you've got just a hint of sparkle in there. And then we have number 137, Porcelain d'Or, which, again, it surprised me with how beautiful it is. It's really more of a burgundy. There's a touch of plum in there, but it's really not that purple. And just for comparison, this is number 402 in Adrian. I'm gonna put that right here. So you can see Adrian's gonna be a little bit lighter, a little bit peachier compared to Or Beige, which has a little bit more brown in it. Another difference between the two is Adrian does not have any shimmer, Or Beige does. Now, before we get started on my thoughts, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these eye swatches with the different application techniques. And we'll also take a look at the looks that I created using these products. And I'll meet you back here for my thoughts after that. We are going to test out the shadows using a brush versus either my finger or an applicator. And we're going to start off with the 927 Cuivre Rose. And this is the Worker 3 from Sonia G. So this is Cuivre Rose with a brush. And we're going to see if a finger application is the same as the foam tip applicator. So that goes on. You can see how richly pigmented it is with the finger compared to the brush. Now we're going to try an applicator in the second half of the lid there. See if it's about the same. Yep, looks like the applicator and your finger are going to both give you pretty opaque coverage. Moving on to 925 or Antique. I wiped off the Worker 3, but we are going to use the other side just to ensure that there is no color crossing. So this is Or Antique, and you can see that the brush side is lighter, but it's not as big of a difference as it was with the Cuivre Rose, which kind of surprised me. So I did also try adding a little bit on with my finger, and it didn't really make a significant difference. Moving on to 926 or Blanc, and this time we're using the Worker 2 from Sonia G. I mean, just sheared out lightly, that's really pretty too, but let's build it up a little bit more with the brush. So this is the shade on the applicator. It looks, in my opinion, a little bit deeper than it does in the pan. So that's with the applicator. And you can see using the finger doesn't really add too much, maybe a little bit. So this is Or Blanc. Next, we're moving on to 928 Queer Brun. And again, the Sonia G Worker 2, I wiped it off, but we're using the other side. Queer Brun with the brush. There's with the applicator, but let's add a little bit with the finger as well. Although the finger didn't add much pigment, I feel like it did provide a little bit more of the satin sheen that kind of got a little brushed away with the applicator. Could just be me though. So this is Queer Brun. Next up, we're gonna try the shadow wet. So we're using Quiver Rose, and I've already got it wet here on my brush, and we're just going to see what it looks like here. You can see that definitely gives more of a metallic sheen. It goes on stronger. Let me show you dry next to it. Here we have Quiver Rose with a wet brush, and over here we have it with a dry brush. Now let's compare the wet brush to a finger application. Here's the difference between wet over here on my right and with a finger application dry. We're going to try it with the Or Antique. So again, we're going to do the wet over here on my right. Over here we have wet or antique, and on my left we have dry or antique with a brush, and now we're going to change that to applicator. Here's the difference with or antique, and I think with this shade it made a huge difference using it wet. Moving on to Or Blanc, and let's see how this one looks wet. Wet versus dry brush application with Or Blanc. Wet brush application versus dry applicator application on the left. Queer Brun. Queer Brun, wet versus dry brush application. Queer Brun, wet application with a brush versus dry application with the foam tip applicator. I thought I was recording, but I wasn't. Right now, I have a layer of Or Blanc on my lids, wet. So I just used the Sonia G Builder 3 dampened and put that all over the mobile lid. And now I'm going into Or Antique with a dampened brush as well. And I'm just gonna place a little bit of this in the center, just for a little bit of a gold accent. Taking the Sonia G Blender Pro, and I'm going into Or Blanc Dry. I'm just gonna kind of smudge the, not smudge, but blend in the crease. I have a dampened Builder 1 from Sonia G, and I'm gonna go into Queer Brun and use this to line the upper lash line. And whatever's left is going on the lower lash line. I wiped off the Builder 1, and I'm just gonna go into the side of the brush and just get a little bit of Or Blanc for the inner corner. And this is it for now. I'm gonna go do the rest of my makeup. And this is my final look from a distance. So I added the Surratt Noir Lash Tint, and then on my lips, I have the Chanel lip liner in number 188 Brun Carmen, and it's kind of a deeper, more burgundy red. So I have that kind of like as an ombre effect on my lips. And then I topped it with the red lipstick from the holiday collection, Rouge d'Or. And this is number 127. And of course I have the Chanel Holiday Illuminating Blush on my cheeks. For the eyes today, we're going to start off with 928 Queer Brun, and I'm using the Rephr 02. Just going to apply this to the outer half of the eye. Probably about 40% actually, not a full half. While I have this brush, I'm going to take the tip of it and run it along the Queer Brun and just go over the upper lash line with this as well. Just darken it a little bit here. Just adding a little bit of the residue that's left on the brush right here in the inner corner. It's going to be a lot lighter there. Wiping off the 02 brush, I'm going into 927 Quiver Rose. Just going to apply this all over the lid, and I'm tapping it on first, and then I will blend it out. So I'm putting it over the Queer Brun. And I'm just kind of feathering the area with the brown underneath. Next, I'm taking a small crease brush, and this is the Rephr 14, and I'm not adding any shadow. I'm just going to use whatever it reaches and blend that into the crease. For the lower lash line, I'm taking the Quiver Rose, and this is the Pencil 1 from Sonia G. And you can see I have had a little bit of fallout from these shadows, specifically the Queer Brun. Just gonna add a touch of the Queer Brun to the outer corner here. Wiped off the brush, and I'm just kind of blending that a little bit so there's more of a transition. I'm just taking a touch of the 926 or Blanc, and I'm rolling the pencil brush in here. This is just for the inner corner. I'm taking the Chanel Stilo Ombre Contour in 34. This is just like a deep brown. I'm just gonna smudge this into the upper lash line. Actually just gonna put a little bit of this right along the waterline. This is the eye look up close, and I'll see you back to do blush and lips. I'm taking the Chikuhodo KZ4 into the Chaîne de Chanel, and I'm just going to dust this on lightly. And one of the things I like about this brush for this blush is it is a very flexible brush, and it is squirrel hair, so you know it's not going to pick up too much at once. It'll still lay the product down well, and I have enough flexibility that I can get a soft application very easily, which is very important to me with this blush. When I use a more dense brush, I end up having to be a little bit more overly cautious, and with this one I really can just, you know, just put it on however I want. All right, so I think that's good. Gives just a nice accent, and honestly, I'm really loving this blush when I apply it this way. Taking the Chanel Lip Crayon in Nude Brun, this is number 162. I'm gonna go in with number 107 or Beige. This is my final look from a distance. So for my lips, I used the Chanel lip liner in Nude Brun, and then I topped it with the number 107 or Beige lipstick from the holiday collection. We're just gonna do a few swatch comparisons. This is 927 Quiver Rose. I just washed off all of the swatches, so we have fresh skin. This is the new Chantecaille Luminescent Eye Shade in Zebra. So they do have some similar tones to it. What you can see about the Quiver Rose is it's going to be deeper and a little bit more coppery than the Zebra. So the Zebra is considered a rose gold, and you can see they both have a lot of sparkle, And they both have a little bit of pink sparkle in them. However, Chantecaille is more sparkly than the Chanel. And again, the Chanel is a little bit more coppery. You can see when you kind of buff that out that the base tones are actually going to be pretty similar. Another shade we're going to compare it to is this shade here in the Viseart Paris Edit palette. So you can see how shimmery this is here. Okay. And again, we're looking at this one here is Chanel. And you can see that, again, they have some similar tones. This one's going to be rosier and it's definitely a lot more metallic. For the sake of comparison, here is the gold shadow from last year's holiday collection. This is number 56, Grandeur. And this is a creamy powder eyeshadow in the Premier, or Ombre Premier line from Chanel. And here's Or Antique. And you can see that Or Antique is going to be much more of a yellow gold compared to the one from last year, which has more of that orangey tone to it. Just for comparison, we're taking the gold shade from this year's Dior holiday. This is the Golden Snow palette. And this is really, can be used more as a topper, but you can see how much lighter that is and how it's a little bit cooler in tone. Let's take a look at Queer Brun. We're going to compare it to this deepest shade here in number 308, Clair Obscur. Now this is a different finish. Clair Obscur is a matte finish. And you can see that there is a satin sheen in Queer Brun, but they are a little similar. This one's going to be a little bit richer from Clair Obscur. And you can see that there is, it's just a little bit deeper and richer. It's also a little bit cooler in tone, whereas Queer Brun is really pretty neutral. We're going to take a look at the Dior Quint in Jungle, and we're going to check out this deep brown. And again, they're pretty different. You can see you've got a little bit more red in the Dior Quint, and it's like a cocoa shade though, so it's different. This one's definitely a little bit richer as well. Let's check out the deepest shade here in Nude Dip from Tom Ford. That one looks like it might be the most similar. Let me re-swatch Queer Brun right next to it. I'm going to put Queer Brun right here in between the two. You can see that they are going to be different shades. This one, it doesn't have the reddish undertone that we have in the Tom Ford. And then let's take a look at Or Blanc as well. We're actually going to take a look at, this is the Soleil d'Hiver quad from last year's Tom Ford collection, and we're going to take a look at that lightest shade there. It's probably going to be my closest one in the collection, but you can see this is peachier, whereas this one has more gold. Let's take a look at the Bobbi Brown. This is the Luxe Encore eyeshadow palette from the holiday collection in bronze. We're going to look at the shade Champagne, this one here. It's still got more gold in it. We're going to compare blushes. We're starting with the Les Chaînes de Chanel. I'll use the other arm this time. So here's Les Chaînes de Chanel. And my closest two are actually Chanel blushes as well. This is 02 Rose Bronze. And 260 Alabaster. So you can see that the two blushes in the regular line really go on a lot lighter with a finger swatch. And again, the illuminating blush, you still end up getting kind of a light look if you use a more feathery blush. But you can see that there is a little bit more copper in the holiday blush than either of these. Unfortunately, the other blushes I have really I don't really have one like this in my collection. So those are my best matches. I hope those clips were helpful. And I think for me personally, playing around with the eyeshadows with different application techniques really helped me get to know the eyeshadows a little bit better and how I prefer to apply them. So if you have picked up any of these, I definitely recommend trying out different techniques of application with these to see what you prefer, because I really think that it makes a huge difference with this particular formula. When the collection first came out, I was really a little underwhelmed. I guess I just had some higher expectations. I was hoping there would be a quad. I still think these shades would be perfect together in a quad, and I wish Chanel had done that. But I do really like the Ombre Premiere formula as well. I'm happy to have some singles in my collection, but I do personally think this color story would have been perfect as a quad. That being said, I have to say these eyeshadows were a pleasant surprise for me. So I ended up really liking them, and once I started to really play around with them, I ended up liking them more, and that's because of the versatility and application. I really think using these shadows with like a light wash and just getting a hint of the color is a really nice sophisticated look, and you get that sparkle that gives you the holiday spirit and so forth. And I really like that with these three. The Queer Brun I think is a nice basic, but I thought I would like it more than I do. I like the shadow, but I thought for sure it would be like hands down a favorite, and it's not, but I do really like it. I like all of these shadows, but none of them are favorites for me. Now the Orientique I think is a really nice Midtown gold, and I really like it. I don't have a ton of gold in this tone in my collection. So for me, having this in my collection, it makes a nice addition. However, I do think there's not really too much special about the actual shade, and you probably have it somewhere else if you have shadows with gold in them, palettes with gold and stuff already. I typically don't have too many of those. Or Blanc actually surprised me because you can see how champagne it looks, and I was really looking forward to this, and it surprised me. I'm very happy I got it. I was really looking forward to it. It didn't really hold up to what I was expecting, but it surprised me in a good way. So I actually really like how when you put this on, it has that touch of gold to it. It looks kind of like a soft pale gold with some silver mixed into it. And it just has some complexity to it that I just find really intriguing. So Or Blanc is probably my favorite shade out of these four that came out. Quiver Rose is the one that I was most nervous about, because a lot of times these more rose toned shadows they just don't look that great on my eyes. And after coming off of the fall collection with all the reds and the pinks, I really was pretty nervous about this because I wasn't thrilled with the fall collection, but I am going to play with those some more. So we'll see how those go. I want to try a few more things with those. However, I was very nervous about this, and as a one and done shade, I personally don't really care for it on me. However, mixing in another shade with it, or like today, I have the Queer Brun with it, I really like the combination, and I also really like using it lightly with a lighter application on my eyes. I just don't particularly care for having it as my only shadow. So overall, I'm very happy that I picked up Quiver Rose, and I do think that is different from the blush. Queer Brun actually surprised me. I thought I was gonna like this one more than I did. I still really like it. So I guess that sounds kind of bad, but I thought this was gonna be like a hands down favorite, must have in my collection. And it's not. It's a nice mid-tone brown, but it is a little muddy looking. And I like the satin sheen on it. I think it works really well. And I think it's a versatile shade to have in my collection. But I think I was picturing just something to be a little bit more, I guess a little more taupe, whereas this one's really more of a mud brown. And I was thinking it would be a better one and done shade for me. And, I think it's not perfect as one and done on me, but I do think on a deeper complexion, it would be gorgeous as a one and done shade. Now for me with the Queer Brun, I like to mix this in with other shades. I'm really enjoying applying it to the outer corner and then layering another color on top of it to add a little depth and complexity to it. Now, as to the blush and the eyeshadow, you can see that the finish is very different. I could see getting the blush and using it as an eyeshadow. You won't have quite the same finish, but you could easily take the blush apply that to your eyes and then top it with a little bit of the Or Blanc or just any sort of like light glittery eyeshadow that you already have in your collection. And I think that would still give you a pretty similar effect to the Quiver Rose eyeshadow. However, I think using the Quiver Rose eyeshadow as blush doesn't really work so well. And I just think it's too shiny. And in my opinion, it's a little bit too coppery. You know, the blush actually has a little bit more rose in it, which works better on the cheeks than this one does for me. The Quiver Rose is just a little too coppery and a little bit too sparkly to, you know, work well, in my opinion. And I do have a comparison of that in the original video, so check that out if you haven't already. And I think that might help you if you're looking for a little bit more detail on using those in a more versatile way. Another thing that I really enjoy using these three eyeshadows for, particularly the Quiver Rose, is to dab a little bit in the center of my lips. So let's do that right now and I'll show you how that looks. So I just take a little bit on my finger and dab it here, and you can see it gives a little bit of extra sparkle. And it just adds like a little bit of hint of, you know, a little shimmer and color that kind of blends in really well with the lipstick. This also looks really nice with the Or Antique or the Or Blanc, but for some reason I really gravitate more towards the Quiver Rose with this. I just, you know, I like how the color is a little bit more reminiscent of the lipstick shades as well. So it looks beautiful with the red one, in my opinion. All right, let's build that up a little more. So you can see that that just gives it a little bit more of a metallic look to your lips, which, you know, can change up your lipsticks a little bit. As for the illuminating blush, I am very happy that I ended up picking this up. I almost didn't, and that's what made me take so long to get the collection in the first place, because I just couldn't make my mind up on what to purchase. And I'm very happy that I picked it up. Now, when I apply it with a denser brush like the Classic Cheek from Sonia G, you can see that this is more of a dense blush brush. This gives me a much stronger application with the blush, and in my opinion, it just ends up looking a little bit too sparkly, too illuminating for me. I see a little bit more of the copper glints in there, and it's just not great for my particular coloring. It would be beautiful on people with slightly deeper coloring. So light, medium, deep skin tones, I think that, you know, buffing that into your face with something a little bit more dense would give you this beautiful, beautiful glow. For fair skin like mine, I prefer using a lighter application, so I enjoy using a wispier brush. For example, something like the Soft Cheek from Sonia G or the Chikuhodo KZ4, which I've been using, so something with a little bit more flexibility. And I also enjoy using, you know, something with a softer hair, like a squirrel hair also will pick up a little bit less product than goat hair does as well. Now, regardless of what brush you use, it's still going to give you a light application that is buildable. So even if I go in with a denser brush, I'm not getting a clown-like look. It is still going to be soft and subtle. It's just going to be a little bit more intense, and because of the density of the brushes, you get a little bit more of the sheen from that particular blush than you would, you know, with a looser bristled brush. So overall, with the blush, I think it's very versatile and I'm very happy with it. If this were in the regular line and it costs the normal $45 for the regular blush size, I would definitely recommend everybody goes and picks this one up because it's a really nice shade and I have really been enjoying it. Now, this is in the holiday highlighter type packaging. It's much larger than the regular blush. So this is the holiday blush highlighter in Le Chien de Chanel versus a regular blush. So a regular blush is 6 grams and the holiday one is 8 grams. And again, I think it's gorgeous, but it is $70. So whether you want to spend this much on this blush is up to you. However, I do think this is probably my favorite part of the collection. Besides the lipsticks, actually. So I absolutely love the 4 lipsticks. that came out with this collection. So it's these 4 here. And I have to say all 4 of the shades look beautiful. The formula is great. They're smooth, they're comfortable. I don't feel grittiness from the glitter, and they last well. I personally love the Rouge Allure line from Chanel. I think they are a fantastic formula, and these do not disappoint. As a matter of fact, I find all 4 colors to be incredibly wearable, and I have been wearing them nonstop essentially. So I'm very happy with the 4 lipsticks. So for me, if I were to narrow it down and rebuy my holiday items, I would probably pick up the entire collection again because they are all items I'm going to use and I like all of the items. However, if I wanted to really narrow it down and pick up my favorites, the things that I find to be the most special from this collection would be the illuminating blush in Les Chaînes de Chanel and the Or Blanc eyeshadow. I think this one is the most unique out of them because of that silver gold tone to it, that complexity. And I also think it fits in pretty well with pretty much anybody's collection because it's a neutral with a little something special. And then, you know, the lipsticks. Honestly, I can't pick one lipstick that I like more than another because I've really been wearing all 4 of them and I love all 4 shades. And, you know, again, if you have Adrienne, they're pretty similar, so you don't technically need both. The red, I'm sure you have a red that's similar in your collection, but I love this red. The purple isn't really that purple, so, you know, it's a great berry burgundy shade, and the Quiver Rose is a great mid-tone rose. So I would think, you know, if you are interested in any of the lipsticks, pick 1 or 4 and, you know, try them out, but I think they are fantastic, and I love all 4 of the shades. And one of the things I like about this formula is it's very easy to get a light wash of it if you dab it on your lips or, you know, just kind of like blot it after applying, and you have really great lasting time with these as well. And one last thing that I would like to know about the application of the eyeshadows. As I mentioned, it's a very versatile formula, and this formula is great because you can go in with a brush and get a light application with a, you know, lighter, fluffier brush. You get more of a wash of color with some sparkle, more like a slightly more pigmented topper shade. But you can also go in with a denser brush, something like the Rephr 02 that I use today. And you can see that these shorter bristles make it a little bit stiffer. You can see there's not quite as much flexibility. And this is going to apply the color a little bit more densely like it would with the foam tip applicator. And you can also use your fingers. So I think fingers and foam tip application or super dense short bristle brush, those are all things that will give you a lot of pigment with these. And you can do an entire look using one shadow and different application styles to really create the depth that you want in a look. So if you just use your finger and apply the shade to the outer corner, and then you use a brush to wash over the entire lid over it, you'll still have the depth from the darker part of the outer corner, and you're still just using one shadow. So I think that is really great. Now, that sums up my thoughts on the Chanel holiday collection. And these are the products that I'm going to be using again and again on my channel. So if you have picked any up or you're still kind of on the fence about what to pick up, I will have more videos and things featuring these shadows as well as the ones from the fall collection as well. I really want to go back and play with those. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button, please hit that and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I have my next video. And if there's anything in particular, any particular combinations you're interested in seeing, please leave those down below in the comments. I would also love to know what your thoughts are on this holiday collection, whether you've already picked something up or if you are considering it. I know this collection has not been released everywhere yet, but I believe that it should be released pretty much everywhere by the second week of November. Honestly, that's a rumor though, so it has not been substantiated, so I don't know for sure, but I know that there are definitely people in other countries who haven't had the chance to pick up this collection yet. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope I was able to help you make a decision and see these colors a little bit more clearly, and I will see you next time. So have a great day and stay safe and healthy.